Hello everyone, today I want to share my Ayato build and team compositions with you in the short guide. I start with the build, then go over team compositions and at the end show some Abyss gameplay.
Emerge, right now, emerge. Break a leg!
He is using a pretty standard DPS build, just high crit rate, crit damage, in his case obviously a hydro damage bonus, and I still think he uses attack over max HP. Even though he has HP scaling, his base attack also is super low, but I still think it is better. As for Elemental Mastery, ignore it, he has way too high hydro application to finish reactions, so it's not good on him. And as for Energy Recharge, I have some, but I still think you can pretty much ignore it, because if you're fighting a single boss, for example, and you don't go like crazy high energy recharge, I can almost guarantee you that you will have your elemental burst skill on only every other rotation. So I don't think it's too valuable as well. As for talents, you can pretty much ignore the normal attacks, I just leveled them up to try it out, and the elemental skill should be your first priority and then the elemental burst skill. As for Constellations, it's just a lot of personal damage except for Constellation 4, which increases your character's normal attack speed by 15% on top of the normal attack damage that the elemental burst skill grants, which is obviously great. It increases its value as a standard support in, for example, an Ayaka freeze team. As for weapon options, unfortunately, a lot of the 4-star options don't look too great in my opinion. The Festering Desire doesn't seem to work. The Sacrificial Sword has a really low base attack, and the same goes for Ayato, so if you put the two together, you pretty much end up with no attack, which feels really bad in my opinion. The flute is decent. You obviously have a really easy time triggering this effect with a character that attacks this fast. Otherwise, you also have the Inazuma craftable sword, the Amenoma Kageguchi, which is decent on him as well. If you choose to buy the Battle Pass, you obviously have access to the Black Sword, which is actually a great weapon for him in my opinion. Otherwise, you are pretty much reliant on 5-star weapons, like for example the Mist Splitter, absolutely amazing for him, same as his own weapon. As for artifact sets, we already covered subsets earlier, and for main stats, it's always attack percentage in this slot, a hydro damage bonus in this slot, and crit rate or crit damage, whichever one balances your build better, in the last slot. As for sets, the really easy, accessible, and good option is obviously the Gladiator set. If you're farming towards like a freeze team with Ganyu or Ayaka, for example, you obviously have access to the Heart of Depth set as well. Just for Ayato, I wouldn't recommend farming this domain though, and the same goes for the new set. It is in theory the best one on him, but I don't know, it feels kind of bad just to farm this domain only for this one character in my opinion. As for team compositions, you either play him as like the anchor as a DPS in a quick swap team, or you just play him as a regular support to increase normal attack damage. Either way, the first slot always goes to Ayato, and the second slot can be pretty much any healer. Most people prefer Bennett, so I'll just stick to him for simplicity's sake. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, I'll link another video down below if you're interested in that, but to briefly cover it, Ayato as a DPS you obviously pick two supports, and the great thing about Ayato is he is really flexible. You can pick an Anemo character to lower the hydro resistance obviously, or you could pick other supports to enable reactions, for example a pyro support, an electro support, or to enable a freeze team, a cryo support. Or you can pick something that has general utility, for example something like Yunjin to increase his normal attack damage, and if you have Constellation, also his attack speed. To give you some examples, you could obviously bust out the good old national team with a jungling and another electro support, or you can pick any Anemo support instead of both of these. Otherwise, you obviously can pick a freeze team with something like Rosaria, and an Anemo support like for example Venti or Kazuha would be ideal, or you pick something like I said earlier, Yunjin to increase the normal attack damage, and another Geo support, for example Zhongli or Albedo. Or if you want to pivot Ayato into a standard support role, you can obviously pick something like Ito as a main DPS. He benefits a little bit of Ayato's normal attack buff, but a character that actually benefits a lot from his normal attack buff is Noelle, and I believe there is actually quite a fan base for her, so this is actually a quite nice team for her, I believe. Otherwise, if we already cover the good old Ayato as a standard support team, we obviously have the freeze team with Ayaka and stack a lot of normal attack damage on her with Ashane and Ayato as supports. And now for the showcase. Surprisingly enough, Ayato's elemental burst skill actually does snapshot. I thought they are over that mechanic, but it does. So you obviously lead with Bennett, use the elemental burst skill into Ayato's elemental burst skill, and then switch to the rest of your team and activate all their skills. Then you can obviously use the elemental skills as well, and then you finish the rotation with Ayato's elemental skill, and after it's run out, you just rinse and repeat. One more noteworthy thing is Ayato has a passive skill that generates energy passively while he is off field up to 50% of his elemental burst skill. So what you want to do is press his elemental burst skill soon in your rotation, then switch to the rest of your characters and get back to Ayato, and ideally are at around 50% energy, and then finish up your energy generation with the elemental skill of Ayato. Like I said earlier, in practice it doesn't always work out great because the energy generation of his elemental skill might not be enough, but that's the principle how you want to use him. You don't want to use your elemental burst skill and instantly press your elemental skill. And for now I'm gonna leave you with some Abyss gameplay and come back at the end of the video. I think so far in Abyss it seemed like high burst damage is just the way to go, and unfortunately Ayato doesn't really have that, but he has high consistent damage, which is also good, and it gets the job done, I guess, but just not as fast, unfortunately.
Mind the deluge.
Stand clear. Animal test 6308. Don't break my glasses. Enhanced animal module. A sight to behold.
Be still. This is getting interesting.
Stand clear. Everybody stand.
Adept back.
Animal hypostasis emulation. What a nuisance.
Alright, we made it to the end. I hope this gave you some inspiration for your own bits. Stay tuned for more videos. Until then, have fun and bye bye.